Hey, Lifehouse Church, hope you guys are doing great today. Welcome into another Wednesday night devotion. So glad that you could take a few minutes to join us tonight. Thank you so much. We are in the book of Nehemiah tonight, and so going through the chronological Bible, it's crazy. We are in September, started reading this thing in January, and we're almost finally into the New Testament. I remember the first time I got that. I don't know, there's something about putting the months to it that just made it different. It's like, holy cow, we don't get to the New Testament until September. Almost there, just a few more days, and we'll be in the New Testament. And so, interesting in Nehemiah that it's one of the last things that happens chronologically in the Old Testament because it's toward the front of your regular Bible. And so, just kind of love how it puts it in perspective here. And so, Nehemiah is one of the most well-loved books in all of the Old Testament, especially by church leaders. I got to tell you, my previous pastor was a Nehemiah junkie. Like his life verse came out of Nehemiah, and like the church vision plan came out of Nehemiah, and he had like Nehemiah napkins and bathrobes. I don't know if he really had that, but he was just a Nehemiah junkie. And Nehemiah was one of the greatest leaders in the Old Testament. If you're not familiar with the story of Nehemiah, he was a cupbearer to the king, and during this time the people of Israel were returning to Jerusalem to try to rebuild the temple, try to rebuild the city. But Nehemiah hears that even though the people have returned, the walls have not been rebuilt, and the walls during this time of the city were such an important sign of the city's strength, of just what made it a city. You know, the cities looked different than they do now, and walls were what signified that a city was legitimately a city and had a people and had an identity. And so when Nehemiah hears that these walls are down, his heart is broken because he knows that means that even though the people are returning and God's trying to do a work, he knows that it's not going to work unless these walls get rebuilt. And so the king looks upon, God gives Nehemiah favor with the king. And once again, kind of like we talked about last week with Esther, how there's no overt miracles in the story of Esther, same thing holds true with the story of Nehemiah. It's just a lot of planning, a lot of hard work, and God's favor behind the scenes at work. And so Nehemiah gets incredible favor from the king, goes back to Jerusalem to help rebuild the wall. The king gives him supplies and resources. And so things are going great. They're kicking butt. But Nehemiah then faces some opposition by the name of these guys, Sanballat and Tobiah. They just sound like bad guy names, right? Like Sanballat. You know, it's like, that's just a bad guy name. If you hear that in the movie, you know this guy is going to stab someone in the back. And so what happens is they just oppose the whole rebuilding process. They're mocking Nehemiah. Man, they're talking trash. They're talking smack. They're looking at this wall. It's like, Mike, if a fox ran across that wall, the whole thing would crumble. You know, fox smack talk, probably the worst type of smack talk back in ancient Israel. I don't know, just making this stuff up, right? And so anyways, I want to pick up the story in chapter 6 because I think this is just, I just want to give you a little nugget out of Nehemiah tonight. So in chapter 6, starting in verse 1, the header says, continued opposition to rebuilding. Verse 1 says, Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gate. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at once at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. Right there, if you know, hey, if someone wants to meet you at somewhere called Ono, you better not go. You know, all you TikTok people, you're like, oh no. You know right away. It's like, it's not going to go down well. So Nehemiah says, I realized they were plotting to harm me. Verse 3, so I replied by sending them this message. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? 4 times they sent the same message, and each time I gave the same reply. The 5th time, Sanballat, and so then he like goes on, makes up this big story of like, you know, this conspiracy, all this stuff. So, but the point I want us to hone in tonight is just, and you may have heard this if you've been in church for a while, this verse 3, this word, I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? And I want to tell you, Nehemiah was focused on the great work that God had called him to do. And that's my encouragement for you tonight, is to remain focused on the great work that God has called you to do. We live in an age of distraction. We live in an age of positive distraction and negative distraction. Right now, you can go on social media and you can get distracted for hours. You can get worked up about what you believe. You can get worked up about your viewpoints and your ideologies. You can get criticized, and you can fight back, and you can get engaged in this thing. But I want to ask you, is that really the work that God has called you to do? Or is there a great work that God is calling you to do? That maybe the enemy is using distraction to try to get you to come off the wall and to lower yourself and pull you away from the great work that God has called you to do. There's so much distraction in our life. Entertainment is great, but entertainment can be a distraction in our life. Sports is great, but sports can be a distraction in our life. Our phones are great, but our phones can be a distraction in our life. God has called you to a great work. God has called you to a work. Maybe that great work is your family. Maybe that great work is your children. Maybe that great work is your spouse. Maybe you're an empty nester, and now the time you have, maybe that great work is a ministry or an organization that you're supposed to support and you're supposed to partner with. Maybe that great work is helping to partner with organizations like Project Hope and work at feeding the homeless, or maybe it's taking meals to senior citizens, or maybe it's working with underprivileged kids in the foster care system. There's a great work that God has called you to do. Maybe the great work that God has called you to do is to partner with what's going on at Lifehouse Church and to serve and to be involved in a life group and to pour your life out. Maybe you're watching this and you're someone who says, my best years are behind me. I want to tell you that's not the case at all. God has still a great work for you. God wants to use your experience. He wants to use your wisdom. He wants to use the victories and the defeats that you've had in your life to be a blessing and to minister to the next generation and to pour your life into someone. God has a great work for you. And don't let the enemy, don't let the Sanballats and the Tobiahs pull you off the wall of your great work. Don't let the distractions of this world and the distractions of everything that's going on. Don't get so worked up about stuff that God hasn't called you to do. Nehemiah refused to be distracted. He was up on that wall and he said, I am engaged in a great work. Why should I come down? Why should I allow distraction and noise and just chaos? Why should I let that pull me off of the great work that God has called me to do? God has called you to a great work in your life. And don't let the distraction of the enemy pull you off of that. Stay focused. Stay engaged. Stay in the fight. Stay in the battle, because you're called to build the wall in your life. You're called to bring that protection to the people that need it. You're called to bring shelter and safety to the people that need it. God has called every one of us to a great work. Don't get distracted. Don't let negativity, don't let pessimism, don't let all the noise of life in the world pull you off of the wall. I'm engaged. When you feel that coming on you, when you feel yourself getting sucked into, I'm just getting sucked into my phone, I'm getting sucked into this, it's almost like this fake world now, this digital world. I'm getting sucked into this. I'm getting sucked into comparison. I'm getting sucked into, this is happening and I don't have this, and I'm just, whatever it is, whatever that thing that wants to pull you off of the great wall, the great work we have. I just want to reiterate the words of Nehemiah one more time. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. I'm engaged in a great work. So I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to engage in a great work. So I'm going to turn off the news. I'm engaged in a great work. So I'm going to focus in on my family. I'm not going to get distracted. I'm engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? Why should I give up what God has put in front of me to get distracted and to give the enemy a place at the table of my life? I don't want to do that. I want to stay focused. I'm going to let the Sanballats and Tobiahs, they can make all the noise they want. The world can make all the noise that it wants. I'm going to focus in on what God wants me to do. So I hope that's a word just of quick encouragement for you tonight. Stay engaged. God's called you to a great work. Don't let the enemy pull you off the wall and distract you. Stay at it and let God do amazing, great things in your life. Hey, Sunday, we are continuing our series, I Have a Question. We're going to be talking a lot about mental health Sunday, which is interesting. A lot of the questions that came in have to deal with mental health. We're going to be talking about, hey, can a Christian be depressed? Can a Christian be on anti-anxiety medication? What about suicide? Some weighty questions this Sunday. So invite a friend. Tune in 9:30, 11 o'clock online. If you can join us in person, join us in person right over here just outside of Chardon. We'd love to have you. 9:30, 11 o'clock. We will see you then. You guys have a great day.